Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity Radiant Light. It is Sunday, June 5th. I'm Reverend Cherie Ruffo, and we are starting a new series today. For the next 12 times that I speak, we will be talking about the 12 layers of the DNA series. And today we're going to be looking at the first layer of DNA, which is biological. It's our grounding layer. And we're going to be looking at the 10th chakra, where it's grounding into the earth. And if you're saying, well, there's only 7 chakras, don't worry, we'll get to that. And the associated archangels, Archangel Azrael. To be fully transparent, I want to let you know where I get my information from. I know a lot of people read along. One is the 12 Layers of the DNA book by Cryon. And if you go to Amazon, you can get the Kindle version there, but the other versions are very expensive and used. So cryon.com website will have them. I'm going to be sending out for anybody, and I'll be bringing this up in a couple minutes, but anybody who wants more information on what I'm using today, if you put your name and your email, if I don't have it in the chat box, Joe will let me know who would like to have slides or information on anything. Thanks. This is my teacher who I adore. Her name is Simone Matthews, and she lives on the Gold Coast in Australia. And I read one of her books, and I just felt such a connection to her that I reached out with her. And I've been studying with her ever since for about 5 years now. And I'm actually right now she has an international school, and I'm getting certified to teach Essence of Angels, which is why we're incorporating the archangels into this series. It all works perfectly together because, as we know, truth is truth. And you'll see how each one ties in so beautifully. If you can't see this chart very well, it doesn't matter, because we're going to be going through each one every week. And I can send these to you in an email in a better version. And I also, when we start getting into science and spirituality, I think of Bruce Lipton. And he is phenomenal. I go to Cryon conferences every year. We're heading to one in 3 weeks, a few of us that are here. And The Biology of Belief is one of the books that he's written, and it's amazing. He's able to bring it down to a layperson's level, thank goodness. And I'm going to be opening this series with what he has to say about what we're going to be covering over this summer. He froze up again.
So I realized that the cell membrane was the equivalent of a computer chip, and that the environment was actually typing on the surface of the cell, because on the surface are these receptors, which are the equivalent of keys on a keyboard. So when information from the environment would hit the appropriate receptor, would send a signal in the cell and control the hard drive and the programming. And while I was doing this, I realized, oh my goodness, the difference between one human and another human is that on the surface of our cells, we each have a unique set of receptors, like keys on a keyboard, and that each of us has our own set of unique antennas called self-receptors. What was relevant about this was I realized is that if you take the self-receptors off the surface of the cell, you lose the identity. And then I said, wait a minute. The identity is not actually the self-receptors, it's what's being picked up by the antenna. And all of a sudden I said, but the antennas are on the outside of the cell, and they're reading the environment. And then I said, oh my God, my identity is an information from the environment that's being picked up by these keys and then played into the system. Well, immediately the first thing that came across my head was, but if the cell dies, the environment is still there. And my identity is somewhere out here. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's just like, blew me away, because here I am living in a mechanical, physical, biomedical world of here you are, then you die, then you're dust. And then all of a sudden I start to realize my identity is not even inside the cell. My identity is a signal in the environment. So a body is like a television set, and the antennas are receiving a station, so I'm playing the Bruce show right now. And what was relevant about that was, at that very instant, I realized, yeah, but when a picture tube breaks on a television, you say the television's dead. And then I say, yeah, but did the broadcast stop? And that's where I realized, oh my God, the identity is a continuously playing broadcast, and the body is a television set that comes and goes. And all of a sudden it says, immortality. And here it's like, but I'm not a physical mortal. I am an energy mortal. I'm part of the field. I'm something out there that's being picked up. Well, from 1 minute, a whole life of 40-some years of mechanical biology, genes, biochemistry, and all that, and then 1 minute later, after understanding this, it's like immortality, spirit, and all this other stuff. It was like, wow, it was a real blow of my mind kind of understanding. And yet the reality is, once I started to move into this plane, I started to recognize the value of this information. I started to recognize the value of the thoughts, the energy fields, and all this. And what was more important as a scientist for me was, funny, because I was so excited by the mechanical stuff that I couldn't wait to tell anybody. If I could get people into a room and sit down and say, look how this thing works. If you see how it works, it's the most amazing thing in the world, because you can create the most wonderful life if you understand it. And people in the audience would go, Lipton, your life doesn't look that good for a guy who says you know this stuff. And that was my second wake-up call. My second wake-up call was a simple reality. Just because I became consciously aware of this information, it didn't change the life that I had. And I had to then start to understand it was more than just information. I had to get into the nature of the mind and the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and start to realize just because knowledge came into my conscious mind, it didn't change the programming of my life. And this is the big issue that most people have in today's new age world, is like, I read the self-help book, I went to the lectures, I went to my psychiatrist, and we found out all the reasons why my life is this way, and yet my life is still this way. And it's like, this is exactly where I was myself. The point is, the conscious mind learns in a different way than the subconscious mind. So while I had all this magnificent knowledge about how I could make a wonderful life, my programs were still from my childhood, were still limiting me and preventing me from experiencing it. But the fun part as a scientist was to try to understand the nature of this, then start to rewrite the programming, which I ended up doing, to find out, for example, that I do live in heaven. And this is my life today, and now it's much more exciting to go out and tell people about this information, because not only can I tell them about how this information arises, but I can tell them about how this information becomes incorporated in their lives, and how you can use this information to create health and happiness and harmony on this beautiful planet.
And and he does speak quickly, but he is amazing. And when we used to, before COVID, we had every year there was they'd have a really huge Cryon conference, and they were all over the country in different spiritual places. And he was with what was called the Three Amigos, and it was Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, and Bruce Lipton, and they would come out and they would teach, and it was just amazing. So he is definitely one of my favorite speakers. But he had a good point. Don't you just love to hear scientists say immortality and recognize the fact that there is something beyond this human body? And that's what they're finding out. And that's what this series is really about, is us pulling back, looking in the layers of the DNA and talking about, because we can't activate them. It's a fairly simple process. And actually, we already have a blueprint through our 5 unity principles, especially principle 3, where through our thoughts and our words, and we can add feelings to that, we create our own field. We create our life. And so we'll be looking a lot closer at that. All this information, there's a lot of information in this, and I know there is. It could easily be a 2 to 3 hour class on each layer. And what I'd like to say is that next year I will be doing a class on the 12-week class on this, so we can come and spend a few hours working with each of the layers. But what I've done here is I've taken what to me seem to be the most important parts of this, and we're bringing them together into a pretty quick talk every week. And if you want more information about this, if you need to look at the slides again, Jesse does post this, all the talks within 24 hours of the recordings on Sundays. But also, I do have more information that I can send you. We are Unity Truth students, and I know you guys are really curious, so you can always put your name and what you would like me to send you in the chat box. I need to know what date it is to make sure I'm sending you the right thing. But I can send you the slides, links, contacts, because I'm going to be giving you a lot of information on this. So what is the DNA? We're going to start there. We're going to look at the science principles, and then we're going to move into the esoterics. We're going to look at The esoterics are the deeper the quantum, but we can't really see. Things that science is just starting to recognize, but also the spiritual principles that are attached to that. It's not going to be a real science-based, because I'm going to be going into the spiritual principles for this, because as Dr. Bruce said, we want to change our lives. We want to create heaven on earth. And that's why we're all doing this. So basically, when we're talking about this DNA, we're talking about the double helix. We know that there's 22, 23, well, Cryon actually says there's 24 strands of chromosomes, but the ones that we don't see are in the quantum field. But we have these strands, and within these strands of DNA is the foundation. It's you. And it's not just in 1 or 2 cells in your body. We have 100 trillion cells in our body. And this blueprint, this genome, it's the blueprint, is in each cell of your body. So what's there is what we're seeing. The thing that kind of gets confusing when you start looking at this, and when we look at it with disease or in relationship to anything, things going wrong in our life, especially disease, we know that with every 7 years, every one of our cells is replaced and new. So if that's the case, then why, if we have dis-ease, I always say, in our body, why is the new cell copying that? Why is it staying there? The concept of aging, and some cells renew every day or every 3 days. Why is the appearance of aging happening if we have all new cells? And that's where we come together and say that the DNA is in each cell, and it's the brain of the cell. What is impacting that? And this is where Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore were brilliant, the co-founders of Unity, because our beliefs, our actions, our thoughts, our words, that's what we're seeing. And that's what Dr. Bruce was talking about. That's the impact on it. That's how we create the change. So how do we get that to change? Well, it's actually a fairly simple process. We change our beliefs. Can be simple, but as he was talking about, there's the unconscious and the conscious. Anywhere from 5 to 10% is our conscious mind. Those are fairly easy to work with. Getting to our unconscious, that's where we start working with the affirmations, the prayers, denials, all the things, the tools, the spiritual tools that we have. And the science is finding on this, and the spiritual scientists are finding that just by becoming aware of this, and by becoming a more compassionate person and living a higher consciousness life, these changes start to happen automatically. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be shifting, changing these cells, creating the things that we want to create. Someone asked me when they heard I was doing this, they said, so can I get taller? I'd like to be 4 inches taller. And I said, I don't know, because it all depends on where this belief system is in your cells. What are your words? What are your actions for it? And, we know that Charles Fillmore had an injury when he was a child where his leg stopped growing. He became very infected. He had a limp. One leg was 4 inches shorter than the other leg. Using this process that he we didn't have a name for back then. Using this process, his leg grew 3.5 inches as a man. He was in his 30s. He always says that last half inch was a test of faith. That's why it was a half an inch off. But he was able to do that to heal that part of him. Myrtle, as we know, Myrtle Fillmore was told that she had, a couple months left to live, and she was able to heal her body from the disease, the tuberculosis, and she lived for 46 more years till she was 86 years old. So we know that this is powerful. And we also know that when we talk about the DNA, and a lot of scientists study the DNA, that they say that, okay, we have 5% of DNA that works within us, and 95% they call junk DNA. And that is starting to change now, because there's been studies that have been done now. The Russian Academy of Scientists actually did a study where they looked within the cells at this, and they found that, 5% was encoded from the proteins, the human genome. But they found that instead of the other 95% being junk DNA, they found it was highly intelligent combination of codon sequences, and they actually speak a language. And some we call sacred geometry, light language, whatever that is. There's something that's beyond our understanding at this point. We're just starting to move into that, and it's really in the quantum field. So I think that these next few decades are going to be very exciting. We're going to be, as science is really turning to look at this now, we're going to learn a lot about it. So the activation of our DNA is real. It's a real concept. It's happening right now. It's happening right now here, even as we're talking about this. Between now and Labor Day, we're going to be taking this journey every week, understanding the DNA a little more, but understanding what each layer means. And what we're going to be doing is what Dr. Bruce says, is rewriting our program. So what is it that you want to rewrite in your life? Or maybe it's perfect the way it is, but what is it? Do you want it? What do you want? Is there something that you disease in your body? Is there in your life, that you want to create? Well, these are the things that as we activate these layers, the quantum layers in the DNA, we're going to start to see shift in our lives. So we're going to need, we're not going to just talk about this every week. We're going to need to make changes in our lives. How we think, what we say, what we eat. I mean, if we, do this, go through this process and then treat our body like a dump truck, well, that's what we're going to see at the end, because we haven't changed all of our belief systems. So everything has to come together to work. We're developing and walking into the unity consciousness. We know we're talking about the quantum field, that what we're working to achieve is a unity consciousness on this earth and beyond. So we know that these strands of DNA that we're looking at are authentically who we are. Each one of us has a little bit different. As Dr. Bruce said, it's on the outside of that is who we are. So we can be the ones to rewrite this, or just add whatever you may like where you are in your life. We can choose that unity consciousness, and we can live in harmony. As we do that, we impact the whole planet, because as we know, we're in this field of oneness. And as we choose and walk this higher dimension, it impacts everybody. Because we see right now, you may say, well, things are pretty crazy right now. And you know what? We can turn on the news and things are pretty crazy. I'll agree. But what we can do with this is we know to understand that we're going through a change. So we can't shift as a planet while we have all those things that have been buried and hidden on the planet that are inappropriate, that are out of integrity. So right now, it's like a garden. The soil's being tilled, and those things are coming to the surface, and they have to be healed or not. That'll depend on where our consciousness is. And as we do that, we will grow. And the appearance may be that's really tough, but there is the light that's here. The other thing we know that is happening is that a lot of times that we'll watch a news program or see different things that are designed to keep us in fear and angry. And we can't buy into that, because when we do, that's when we turn off the raising of the consciousness. Anger and fear cannot go into a higher consciousness. It's impossible. This is a consciousness of light and love. So what we need, our most important thing we can do is align to that. And we can walk into this multidimensional reality. Right now, we were born into a planet, into a third dimension, where we see one thing, it's very heavy, dense. But we know, and science is showing, there are many levels and dimensions that are higher than this, and we are striving to get to the dimension of light. So if we've been reading this DNA up until now, until the last couple of years, it would be like similar to reading a book. And in that book, you can only read the one letter. That's how much we don't know. You think about it, we know about the 5%. So the very awareness of this right now, as you're listening, your DNA is changing as you're hearing this. As we move more into love and light, like I just said, we're going to be moving beyond. We're going to be helping the planet. I'm doing, and as we're looking at the different levels, the different things that are happening in science, and 3 weeks from tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a stem cell therapy for my body to help my back, but to help other things. And it's a multidimensional type of treatment that they're having. It's not like anything that you see in traditional therapies. And what will happen is they'll take out a quarter cup of my blood. Then they have a laser that's going to be identifying the cells that they're going to, and that laser will give information to those cells. These cells are dormant. They've been in our bodies since we're born. And what this laser does, it wakes them up, because these are the cells that have our full blueprint, can heal anything. And the laser gives it information and tells it what to do. Then I have to hold it to my heart for 20 minutes while I listen to music. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, to get a heart coherence with me before it's pulled back. And it sounds strange, perfect heart coherence. This is what we're talking about, working in the quantum field. But we can do this too without even, as we're going through this, without stem cell therapy. Changes can be made. We're powerful beyond measure. And the thing we know is that we're taught, as we go into the layers of the DNA, the first layer we're looking at is biology, but it's really connected to the tree of life on this planet. Where are the roots of this tree? They're in the earth. Think about that. We have deep roots in the earth. And there's that attachment. So we're born on this planet. We come in, we know we're eternal, as Dr. Bruce said, we have immortality. But we have a body that we are in while we're here that is deeply grounded to this earth. And it's very important that we stay grounded. And Archangel Azrael, who we'll be talking about in a minute, can help us do that. The earth gives us what we need. And by that further connection to the earth, we can ground. Yesterday I wasn't feeling that great, and we went outside in the afternoon, and my dogs too, and we put our bare feet on the earth and spent about 30 to 45 minutes grounding, having that connection to the earth. And that's what this first layer is all about. It's about us understanding our biology, but also our connection to the planet Earth. So the more that we're grounded into Mother Earth, the greater our light frequency is. And this can happen. It's not talking about just floating higher. It's about grounding that energy into the planet, into the earth, having that deep connection with the earth that provides us with all the things that we need to live in a body here. So as we go back to this tree of life and we look at it, we want to have a strong canopy. It can weather any storm while we're here. So we think about that, having a really beautiful tree of life, healthy tree of life, strong tree of life. And we want our bodies of light to have the same experience. So what we're talking about here is awakening to this truth of who we are. We've been born into a world of old energy and old concepts. And we've moved beyond, and especially if you're sitting here today, we've moved beyond those concepts. We recognize that there is the one creator, this one energy in the universe that's created this earth, that's created us. All these cells, when you think about the intellect that they have, it's amazing. We know that 5% of our DNA is active right now. And what we know is as we're activating these layers of DNA, that 5% is going to increase in each body that's doing it. Do we actually believe that we can become multidimensional? I do. That's why I'm here. That's what attracted me to Myrtle and Charles Fillmore and the Unity movement so much, is because they saw beyond of what was just in front of our eyes and understood that, in metaphysics, it's things that we cannot see. The quantum field, we could do so much more. We could develop that. So we know that there's 12 layers in the DNA. And in these 12 layers, each layer is going to pertain to how we're living on this earth or beyond. And Einstein actually had talked about this. He said, we will begin to solve our problems when we change our focus, that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So think about that. We have to make this shift to make these changes in our lives. As we talk about the 12 layers of the DNA, we're going to be looking at the 13 energy centers. Now you say, well, I thought you said 12, there's 13. Well, if you notice, we have bookends here too. We have on the bottom, we have number 1, the Earth Gateway, Archangel Sandalphon, who's actually also connected to 13 up there, the Cosmic Gateway to Archangel Metatron. So we're really looking in the 12 weeks, but we know that we have the bookends, and we're going to finish with Metatron. And as we look, we see that these other gateways are there. We know that we're raised really with the 7 chakras. But as we've talked about, as we've opened the quantum field and these other dimensions becoming multidimensional, that there's more than, there's 12 or 13, as we say here. So each week we're going to look at that. We're going to look at an aspect of water, air, fire, and earth. Today, obviously, we're looking at earth. I have Metatron's cube here that we'll be using. I have some things to use during the meditation that represents the sacred geometry and how this all works. So this first layer of the DNA is, we're going to take a look at an artist when we're in meditation who created a beautiful piece of artwork representing it. And also what Cryan has done is put together Hebrew names to go with it. The Hebrews have many names for God, but there's 12 of them that actually relate to the earth, that relate to our, our being here. So we're going to look at those. There's a lot of power in those words, so I did record the names in Hebrew. So if we look at this layer of God, this first layer of the DNA, we know that it's filled with sacredness and love, that these layers are interactive with each other. And we know from the Tibetan numerology, which numerology is the study of science, the science around numbers. DNA number 1 represents new beginnings. It's all about the self. So it's called the biology level. And with that, we can put this all together and know that this is the foundational level. This is the number 1. Everything, a lot of it, as with the 12 powers that we study in Unity, a lot of them will relate with other powers, like the number 1 power, faith. It relates to all the powers, works with all the powers. This level, biology, works with all 12 layers of the DNA. It has our karmic imprint on it, our astrological imprint, and our Akashic, which means all the lives we've ever lived imprint. If you don't believe in reincarnation, then it would be our ancestral imprint, all the lives our ancestors have lived. And it's all energies that are pertaining to the planet Earth, our consciousness. It's also waiting for us. This one is so foundational and connected to the Earth because Archangel Azrael is here to help us awaken and remember who we are, that we are multidimensional beings. As we saw it as the chemicals, the DNA structure of the tree of life. And there's no such thing as the beginning, even though we'll say the number 1 is the beginning. Once we get into this quantum field, we know there's no such thing because we're eternal. There was no beginning, there is no end. But it helps us to move our understanding. We're at the beginning of that process. And we can change that. And Archangel Azrael helps us with that. As we dig into the earth, we earth more. We can literally talk to ourselves and our bodies. We can use music, and I have a couple pieces that I'm going to recommend in the upcoming slides that you can download from YouTube for free. But we can use these things. You can sit, if you're an artist, or even if you're not an artist, but you like to do artwork, you can sit and create a piece of art, and that's going to shift your DNA. Here we start seeing homeopathy. We start seeing the tinctures. The tinctures, we know a tiny bit of an essence or a tiny bit of a tincture isn't going to cure our whole body, but it does because it brings in the energy of what it is. I have 3 different essences we're going to use during meditation, one of them being holographic, so it leaves this area and goes into yours. Healing. What we know about this is that it will heal. Robert Coxon can hardly wait. Yeah, he's an amazing composer, and I have a piece of music that's coming up with him. Could hardly wait to get to the piano when he was a little boy because he was remembering how to play. He was never taught. So we know that we have amazing abilities with this, that Archangel Azrael is our grounding angel. Some traditions, like in the Quran, they call him the angel of death. He's seen as the person that helps come into the earth and take people home when they're ready to leave the planet. But for our purposes in the DNA, we're seeing him as the grounding angel. He's here to ground us, wants us to draw energy from him for this, for us to assist with that. When we ground strongly to the earth and harmonize, we find calmness. Archangel Azrael helps with that. We can use the crystals to help with that. We can have hematite, obsidian. They're all really powerful crystals that can help us if we feel like we're out of balance with the earth. So when you're balanced in the earth star, your ability to manifest becomes very strong. You're grounded into the earth. So it's really important that we use that. And really what's said about working with this archangel and this layer of the DNA is you become the best version of you that you can be. So why is grounding so hard for us? It's the ability to surrender to each and every moment. This is about the law of surrender. That's also part of the first layer of the DNA. We have to be able to surrender our ego beliefs or the fact that we have to be in control all the time of everything in order to be able to move forward into this quantum field. When we surrender, we're in the present moment. And it's really important. We're in the only moment that we can actually manifest in, and that's the now. And we release the things of expectations, maybe worthlessness, I'm not good enough, whatever those things that we have in our subconscious that have been playing in the background since we were kids and holding us back and limiting us. This is about us releasing them. And the crystal that we're going to be using for this is the rainbow. Sorry, obsidian is the rainbow obsidian. Sorry about that. So the question to ask yourself: are you attached to your story? Are you having trouble releasing that? And I used this yesterday as an experiment too, because there's some things that I'm trying to release that I haven't quite been able to do. So I went into deep meditation to practice for today. And when I did, I put on a frequency that I'm going to be, that I have embedded in this for you, so you to look at, that you can download for free from YouTube. And it's the 528 hertz with the angelic frequencies for healing. And I really just allowed myself to sit with it. I had my hematite with me, and I really just held that closely. And what happened is I had a vision of something that happened when I was probably, I think I was about 12 years old, something I forgot about. I never remembered. But at that moment when that happened, it embedded the very thing that's in my subconscious that I'm trying to release today that I haven't been that successful with. So along with that comes emotions, of course, and but now I have to work through that as you're releasing. And if you hear I'm a little stuffed up this morning and I have a headache, there's something that also can happen. It's called chemicalization. So as you're moving something that's been there for a really long time, you can have the symptoms of a cold. Some people get rashes. I mean, nothing, I'm not trying to scare you, but just to be aware of that. So you can drink a lot of water and just move that belief system away and affirm your wellness. Mine was pretty quick. I had the dream yesterday, and today I woke up with a headache and I'm stuffed up. So I can definitely feel that difference. It was right on time with the talk, as it always is. So we're going to be bringing clarity to our thoughts with this. We're working with this archangel. He's here to help us ground in the planet, to help us release the things that no longer serve us, to help us in any transition in life that we're in, not just transitioning from life as this archangel is known for, but any you might have a transition in or out of a relationship, in or out of a job or school or anything in our lives. And when people transition in or out of our lives, when they leave this earth plane, this is what Archangel Azrael is here to help us with. Also helps us with protections from psychic attacks, helps us to have better spiritual vision, insight into the issues that might be happening. So we're going to be really looking at that closely as we come out of meditation. I'll have an exercise that you can do this week if you choose to, but just feeling what we're going to do in meditation is spend a little more time just feeling into this, into Archangel Azrael. These are the two YouTube tubes. You can take a picture of it, or I can embed it afterwards so that you can download it from YouTube. One of them is it's 5 hours long. It's the healing with the angels hertz, 528 hertz music. The second one is Robert Coxon, and he was the composer I talked about, who was born with this information. He's awakening to it. He woke very young, and he's continually doing this, as he's not composing from a traditional way. He's channeling what he's composing. This is a really incredible thing to watch. So we talked a lot about Archangel Azrael. We talked a lot about our biology, what the DNA is, and what this first week is about. And it's about us really taking the moment now to surrender to this process, to just allow every cell in your body, it's listening, to know that you are now entering this process and looking at these layers of the DNA. So we're going to do a meditation with that this morning, and invite you to, with your mics muted, you can say your affirmation, as Simone Matthews says here, Ola Owen. And we can just say, I honor the divine love that exists within you, within me, and within all creation. We are one. And before we close our eyes in this meditation, Elon Cohen is the artist and the translator for this first layer of the DNA. He works with the Cryan group, and he actually organizes the conferences. People that are going to Mount Shasta with me will get a chance to meet him in a couple weeks. He's amazing. He's also from Jerusalem. He's from Israel, and he lives in the U.S. now. He married an American, and but he is still working on the art. And this is his interpretation of the first layer of the DNA. And what you see at the top is the Hebrew interpretation, which I'm going to play for you now, because he says it so perfectly.
Layer 1. Keter Etz Chaim. Keter Etz Chaim.
Now let's just do that again. I want you to look into this picture, if you would like to. It's the first, and recognize it as the first layer of the DNA. Let your cells respond to his words. There's so much power that's been measured around this. You'll start feeling that first layer of the DNA awakening. Sorry about that.
Layer 1. Keter Etz Chaim. Keter Etz Chaim.
As we feel our cells responding, this first layer of the DNA, the biology layer, you just relax into that. What are your cells doing? What's happening in your body? Just take a moment to notice. Are your cells, any part of your body, tingling as you hear this information? And we want to do this with our mics muted. So if you have your mic open, please close it. Let's take a nice deep breath in, all the way in, as we feel the cells are listening. Very alert now, because we're talking about our biological layer. Let's just take a nice deep breath in, all the way down, and release. We take another deep breath in, all the way in, and begin the release. Release anything that no longer serves you. I am now using the holographic oil. This is an essence from Australia. And as I use it, I put it in my crown chakra, my heart. The holographic oil allows the expansion of the field beyond what we see in front of us. So if you are willing to accept these essences, these layers, this energy, you just set that intent right now. See, I'm willing to accept this new energy. I have the Archangel Azrael. I'm putting it on the crown of my head, on my heart, and holding it out, feeling the essence, this healing, this grounding, biological level, reaching each person who set that intention. And I will add to it now, because we're working in the quantum field, a quantum essence. So let's just breathe in. Breathe in these essences. Each of the essences is talking to your DNA right now to awaken this. Picking up my obsidian, my Metatron's cube. We have many representations here right now of this first layer of the DNA. And if you have your crystal, your essence is the essence has moved into it, expanding the consciousness, the energy around this, magnifying the effect in a good way, as much as you're willing to accept. So let's, as we focus on our breath for a moment, this time and space. So we let go of the idea of time and space. As we move into this quantum field, we know that right now, this, what we're looking for and what we're in is the space between the space. And let us affirm, I am present. I am present. We set the intention to activate this essence and this first layer of the DNA for as much as we're ready for. So we lovingly evoke the Archangel Azrael through me, through you, the loving keeper of the earth star and earth. And with each breath you take in, surrender to this release, to this activation. Become aware of the presences around you. We're working in the 8th dimensional frequency. You may feel the Archangel Azrael around you. You may see a color, feel something, taste something, hear something. Archangels are not male or female. They're perfectly balanced in both, but they may appear as one or the other if we need that. So let's take a few moments now and just breathe into the Earth star, feeling this energy. So we breathe in, we bring harmony into our lives. Continue the breath. We bring balance into our lives and our bodies, into anything that's transitioning right now. Let's breathe into the balance. You're breathing in healing to any part of your life, whether it's your physical body, any part of your life that needs healing. We feel the Archangel's presence, among others, healing whatever needs to be healed. Now as we sit in the silence, just absorbing this on every level. Breathe in and out of your Earth star. I choose to awaken. I choose to awaken. And as we're coming back, we say, I am willing to activate my first layer of DNA into the multidimensional state. I am willing to activate the first layer of the DNA into the multidimensional state. I am willing to activate the first layer of the DNA into a multidimensional state. Breathe into your Earth star. Stand in your truth. It is complete. And this beautiful energy that you have, share it with the world, to all those who need prayer, all the places that need it. Hold that energy and send it out to the world and beyond. So we know of people who need the physical healing. We see each cell in their bodies working in perfect and divine order. Every area of their lives is prosperous. We see each person filled with joy and perfect peace. And we recognize the entrance to this multidimensional world is understanding that we are from love. We can never be anything else. For this, we're so grateful for all the things, the lessons we've learned from the masters, from the archangels, from Jesus, our way shower. We say thank you, and so it is. If your eyes are not open yet, you can just open them and look at your sacred geometry for the week. I choose to awaken. Candida comes and blesses us with special music.